The jungle has a way of swallowing sound, bending shadows, and making a person forget where the world ends and fear begins. By the time the survivor reached what would become the final encounter in Bigfoot vs. Man Part 3, he had already endured enough terror for a lifetime. But the darkest part of the forest waited for him like a silent predator, patient and calculating, as if it knew his every step and every breath. What began as a desperate attempt to get out of the wilderness turned into an encounter unlike anything he had ever imagined, a confrontation that would push his courage, instincts, and sanity to their breaking point. The air itself felt wrong that night. It wasn't just the damp heaviness of the jungle or the chirping of nocturnal insects that faded in and out like broken static. There was something deeper, something almost intelligent, weaving its way between the trees. After surviving the first 2 encounters with the creature he could no longer deny existed, he knew better than to assume he was safe. Every time the wind shifted, he sensed movement. Every time a branch snapped, his heart jerked inside his chest. The forest was alive, and something massive was moving with him. His flashlight flickered again, the 3rd time in less than 10 minutes. The batteries were fresh, but the dimming felt intentional, as if the darkness itself wanted to claim him. He tried to stay focused, marking trees with broken branches so he wouldn't walk in circles. But soon he realized that no matter how many markers he left, they seemed to vanish, replaced with undisturbed bark or completely different trees. The forest was rearranging itself, or at least that's how it felt. Panic clawed at him, but he forced himself forward, gripping the flashlight like a lifeline. The deeper he went, the more the sounds changed. The usual hum of the jungle grew quieter, replaced by irregular taps, rustles, and guttural huffs echoing just beyond his line of sight. They were too heavy to be monkeys, too rhythmic to be random. Something was pacing him. At times it moved ahead, cutting him off, then circling behind. It was impossible, nothing that big should be able to move silently, yet here it was, navigating the undergrowth as if it owned the terrain. He kept replaying the earlier encounters in his mind, each one more terrifying than the last. The first time, he'd only caught a glimpse of something massive stepping between trees. The second time, it hurled a log the size of a motorcycle at him, missing by mere inches. Now, in the darkness, there was no mistaking the creature's intention. It was toying with him, observing, studying, as if it knew that the more fear it inspired, the slower and clumsier he would become. And in this place, slowing down even for a moment could mean never being seen again. A chilling roar cracked through the night without warning, deep, primal, and resonant enough to vibrate through his chest. It wasn't an animal cry he recognized. It was angrier, louder, and impossibly close. He spun around and scanned the tree line, breathing so hard his vision blurred. The beam of his flashlight caught nothing but dense foliage and shadows that danced with every tremble of his hand. But he knew it was there. Watching, he broke into a run. Branches whipped at his face, roots grabbed at his ankles, and the ground sloped unpredictably as he raced blindly into the darkness. The sound of heavy footfalls thundered behind him, shaking loose leaves and snapping thick branches as if they were twigs. The creature wasn't hiding anymore, it was chasing him outright. Every instinct screamed that he could not outrun it. Yet he had no choice. Stopping meant being overtaken, and being overtaken meant becoming another story whispered by locals. But never proven. He darted between thick trunks, zigzagging to make himself harder to track. The creature responded with equal speed, crashing through obstacles instead of avoiding them. Its sheer power was terrifying. No human could move that fast with that much force. Whatever it was, it belonged here in a way he never could. A massive shadow flashed in the corner of his eye, a towering figure that seemed to glide between trees despite its size. He stumbled, sliding down a muddy slope and landing hard at the bottom. Pain shot through his leg, but adrenaline forced him upright. Above him, the creature stood at the ridge he had fallen from. For the first time, he saw its silhouette clearly, broad shoulders, long arms, and glowing eyes reflecting the faint moonlight. It didn't follow him down. Instead, it tilted its head, watching him with an eerie, almost human intelligence. The pause lasted only a second, but it felt like an eternity. Then it let out a low growl and stepped away from the ridge. He realized too late that it wasn't retreating, it was circling around to cut him off again. It knew the terrain too well. If he didn't find a way out soon, he would be trapped in a natural maze with a predator that had every advantage. He forced himself forward, ignoring the throbbing in his leg. The forest closed in around him, darker than any night he had ever known. Strange knocking sounds echoed from every direction, sometimes rhythmically, sometimes randomly. They seemed like signals, communication from one creature to another. He couldn't be sure if it was just one anymore. The idea that there might be more sent a cold wave down his spine. If this was a coordinated hunt, his chances of survival were slipping to near zero. Minutes felt like hours as he pushed deeper into the forest. The air grew colder, the silence heavier. His flashlight dimmed again until it only produced a faint glow. He slapped it in frustration, and for a moment the beam flared back to life, just in time to reveal something that made his blood freeze. A massive footprint in the mud. Not just fresh, still filling with water. It was right ahead of him. And enormous. He backed away slowly, eyes scanning the trees. His breath caught when he saw movement to his right. A shadow, then another to his left. He was surrounded. The realization hit him hard. He wasn't being chased anymore. He was being cornered. The knocking grew louder, faster, echoing in a pattern that seemed almost deliberate. Whether it was a warning, a call, or a form of intimidation, he didn't know. But every instinct screamed that he was moments from a direct confrontation he couldn't possibly win. Then the forest erupted. Something crashed through the trees behind him, shoving aside a trunk as thick as his waist. A huge figure emerged, taller than any man, with dark fur that blended seamlessly with the night. Its eyes locked onto his, glowing like embers. He felt a wave of raw fear unlike anything he had ever known. It wasn't simply that he was looking at a creature that shouldn't exist. It was the intelligence behind its gaze, the awareness, the intention. This wasn't an animal acting on instinct. This was something more. For a horrifying moment, neither of them moved. The night held its breath. The jungle went silent. Then the creature stepped forward. He stumbled backward, heart pounding so violently it felt like his ribs might crack. The creature's breathing was deep and resonant, each exhale sending puffs of warm air visible even in the darkness. He raised his hands instinctively, not sure why, to defend himself, to appear non-threatening, or simply because fear commanded him to. The creature leaned down slightly, examining him. It emitted a series of low, rumbling sounds, not growls, not roars. Something else. Communication. Testing him. Studying him. Then, without warning, it slammed its fist into the ground with earth-shaking force. The impact sent vibrations through the soil, nearly knocking him off his feet. It was a display of power, unmistakable and terrifying. The message was clear, it could end him at any moment. But it didn't. Instead, it stepped back. Confusion washed over him. Was it letting him go? Why? What did it want? The creature tilted its head again, as if reading his thoughts, then emitted one final, deep rumble before turning away and disappearing into the darkness with impossible speed. He didn't wait to question it. The moment the creature vanished from sight, he ran. He didn't stop to look back, didn't try to orient himself. He ran until the forest thinned, until the trees parted, until the night sky opened above him like a promise. When he finally burst out of the jungle and collapsed onto open ground, he had no idea how long he had been running. Hours, maybe more, but he didn't dare stop until he was certain he was out of the creature's territory. Only when he reached the safety of distant lights, the faint glow of a village or camp, did he allow himself to breathe again. Every step away from the jungle felt unreal, as if he were waking from a nightmare that hadn't fully loosened its grip. But the truth was undeniable. Something enormous, powerful, and intelligent lived in that forest. Something that watched, hunted, and decided, for reasons he could not understand, to let him go. The final escape was not just a physical survival. It was a psychological one. The knowledge he carried with him was heavier than the fear he had felt. Because now he knew, Bigfoot wasn't a myth. It wasn't a story. It wasn't a legend. It was real, and it was still out there, deep in the dark forest, waiting for the next moment when man and monster would cross paths again.